Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today I'm here in the studio with Tej Sidhu and David Perkins. How are you both?
Hey.
Listen, great to have Genesis back on. Perky, we were only doing this in front of chicken wings last time, so it's great to have a professional come and join us.
Rude, but
this time out. Give us a quick introduction to the pair of you as well, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tej Sidhu. I'm the President and Chief Product Officer of Genesis. I was previously CTO and spent most of my career building applications in financial markets. Many years at Calypso before that.
Fantastic.
You know me, Toby. So actually, since we last met, I've actually now moved to Genesis Global full-time. So I am the head of growth and sales strategy.
Fantastic. Well done. I've heard it's all going very well so far.
Thank you.
So look, loads of exciting stuff in the marketplace at the moment, and we're going to start on a topic which I think everyone's talking about, which is the whole concept of AI in the markets. Had Nikita on at the IOM Capital Markets event just recently over in London as well. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of talk, a lot of hype at the moment around AI's impact on traditional SaaS business. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, I guess I can start. I think for me personally, after 2.5, almost 3 decades in this business, it's really exciting because now we can see the ambition to tackle some of the most intractable problems that existed: cost, vendor sprawl, security, compliance. All these things now are within the capability of solving, both as vendors and as clients. And so to me, that's the landscape we're in. It's the best time to be in the business, I think.
Absolutely agree. Well, there's so much innovation in it. And actually, I think the passion that everyone's taking about solving these problems is really exciting as well.
Absolutely.
It brings us a real creative hot pot to the equation.
I think like before I joined Genesis, actually, I was talking to Mark Beeston. I was talking about the SaaS models, talking about fintechs, and what's really clear is that you need to have a strong AI message. You have to be on the right side of AI.
Yeah.
And obviously, we've seen in the market some firms that haven't messaged very well, and it's cost them in their market cap. Yeah, so I think that when I joined, I was very much I had to ensure that the Genesis Global had a real story. It wasn't just a veneer of AI. There was a real story behind the scenes, and that's actually where we're at.
That's 100%. You can see that in the conversations that are happening. I think we're going to come on a little bit later to what that means for you and where you're going. We're also seeing that this whole move where companies are moving from potentially buying software licenses to where they're buying outcomes. Tell us a little bit about what that means and what that looks like.
Yeah, so before I kind of get into that, let me talk a bit about what Genesis is, right? So Genesis is a software company that specializes in capital markets that builds, accelerates, and operates mission-critical applications and workflows across the capital markets landscape. And how that differs from others that might say the same thing is we didn't start off life as another vendor, right, where you're going to hold a client captive with their data and trade in your system. We rather looked across and said, what are the common design patterns across all these systems, whether in-house or vendor-built? And can we create that as a foundation, a set of microservices based on standards, Java, React, and so forth, so a client can build much more quickly, and/or we can build and operate that much more quickly. So that was our kind of differentiated approach to the market. And that's what's brought us to this day. Now, what's most interesting now and how that's landing is that we are now helping clients move AI from experiments to production, called prompt to production. And that's the most interesting part is we'll get to the outcomes and solutions. Is there's no shortage of AI, right? There's no shortage of AI pilots and AI experiments, but there is a shortage of getting those into a governed, scalable production instance.
Especially in this industry.
Absolutely, and given the regulations we'll talk about, the FCA and other people. But that's what's, I think, our unique kind of approach in the market, where we're focusing on outcomes is getting that AI to be production ready in capital markets.
And I think when you look at that, there's a lot of hype at the moment about the whole concept of the SaaS apocalypse and everything like that. It's being based around the ability of vibe coding, and non-developers can suddenly become world-class developers overnight, etc. That's obviously got some context to it around there, and the hype and the reality are two very different things. You mentioned there about governed industries and such like. Tell us a little bit about the threat to fintech companies that comes from vibe coding, whether it should be something that's approached with caution or where the opportunity is.
Absolutely. I think it's more than just vibe coding, it's just coding in general, right? I remember in the early days of startups, when I started in the industry, you would say to clients, hey, you're not a software company, you're a financial service firm, let us be the software company. Now, everyone can be a software company, in quotes, right? So that's no longer a differentiator. So I think if your business model is dependent on capturing a client, right, and holding them captive again, and then increasing your revenue over the years by getting a larger share of their wallet, you're going to be in trouble. Right? That's not the way the industry's going. And it's very clear that now the clients are feeling a sense of empowerment. Right? We saw that in SaaS Apocalypse. So you have to, and we've, I think that plays to kind of our strength because we started from the foundations, not from a packaged solution. And that's how we can help these clients scale with AI, because we're giving them the governance frameworks to be able to do things like coding and vibe coding. And maybe two things that you could add, I think, a point about the regulatory side of it for sure. When we talk to our clients, we see two things. Vibe coding is a real thing, right? In terms of the product people sitting adjacent to the desk can now build high fidelity applications pretty quickly. Right? And they're throwing it over IT, saying, hey, I built this in a weekend. Why does it take you 6 months to deploy? And on the IT side, there's absolutely a wide adoption of the coding tools, no question about it. Now the question becomes, if you can code so fast, how do I prevent myself from having 5 events? Right? So people are really thinking about, yes, I see the value here, but what governance, what controls, and how can we scale this in a safe way? Right? And that's where we're playing right now.
Yeah. I don't know what the proportion would be, but I guess kind of getting code out to live, sort of 25% of it is the code, and the rest is how you then deploy it with compliance and with security. And that's what technology firms do well. I in my past life as sort of consultant advisor in the space, I think that there was talk about AI 5-6 years ago, and you go and talk to the big institutions, tier 1 banks, and it wasn't clear to me they actually had an AI strategy. So I think what happened was you'd have board members who were reading about AI, who would be saying to the exec, what we're doing about AI, and the AI kind of cascading, we need to do AI, and no one really knew what that really meant. I think that now you fast forward to where we are today, and we spoke to a client yesterday, actually, who said there now is a proliferation of AI ideas, but how do you actually get it out into a live environment safely and effectively without duplication, etc., which is a little bit playing into our new product that we're working on. But I think that picking up the point around governance and controls and the regulators, we actually had a conversation with the FCA, which I think is really interesting because it isn't really spoken about very much. And in the UK, there's a senior managers regime. In my last role, TPI Cap, I was a senior manager. And, that comes with quite a lot of significant ability to be fined, to be banned potentially. And so it wasn't taken lightly at all. And I was a SMF2, so I got interviewed a couple of times a year because it was a relatively high level. What I think people perhaps don't recognise is that under the senior managers regime, the senior managers are responsible for running an orderly business. And when you think about some of these businesses which are systematically important, so much so that when we were talking to the FCA, they actually said, in terms of concerns around delivering bad code into the market, which would create an issue, we're relatively comfortable because that is covered under the senior managers regime. So there's senior managers out there who are going about their day job, MDs at large banks and brokers, venues, exchanges, who perhaps don't completely recognise the fact that they've got now product people out there vibe coding, and it's their name that's being connected to that, and if there's an issue, it's coming back to them. And I think it's we were surprised by that because we've been engaging with regulators globally to try and work out how we pitch and what the risks are and what they really care about. And it's very clear that they've thought it through, and and they're pinging the risk over here, not necessarily over Mr. Technology.
I think that's really interesting, and it goes back to I was there talking about the Excel spreadsheet days the other day, and people were talking about, right, where's the originator of this this Frankenstein's monster that's emerged over time, and then the lack of governance that happened around there, and this is being a very similar sort of place. So with everyone effectively now having the ability to be a coder, we have this proliferation of ideas, and that can become quite a dangerous sort of play as well, right? So when we're sat there and we're looking at the ease of AI development at the moment, that creates a huge amount of challenges for these larger financial institutions, right? So tell us a little bit about what that means and how.
I said earlier when we started that this is an exciting time because these institutions can now think about taking on some of the most intractable problems. So one of the clients I met recently, a large global bank, broke their problems down to 3 areas. And look, we have a huge IT staff, and the IT costs have risen faster than the revenues have risen. We have proliferation of vendor systems. Some of them are calcified and never going to go anywhere. Where we have a tremendous amount of tactical financial market solutions that have huge operational risk. So if I can reduce the number of vendor systems, so reduce my operational risk kind of front, and I can reduce make my team more effective and reduce my cost of contractors, these are move the needle problems for me, right? So he broke down the landscape in IT in three areas. One is kind of big infrastructure systems. These are, Salesforce, and they've already got their SaaS approach problems, but they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to change, kind of the way you license. You've got the systems of records, and I know that well from my Calypso days that are become calcified in the organization. They're very hard to get out, and they're very good businesses for that reason. So what role Genesis plays there is helping to scaffold and put modern interfaces and MCP and make these things participate in agentic workflow. But the big opportunity is that third bucket of these massive tactical financial market solutions that are both vendor solutions, in-house built spreadsheets, where there's not only a huge operational risk, we know that, the fines have come out from there in the past, but now with things like Mythos and the ability to find vulnerabilities, if you find a vulnerability, you've got to negotiate with like 100 plus vendors. So we're talking to clients about, can Genesis help both with our development process, which sit on top of the LLMs, and our new product that Ricky talked about, Genesis Create, which makes vibe coding governed for financial markets. Can we help them take out, a large number of unmanaged and operational risky systems and kind of tactical solutions? And we're doing it in a way such that the bank is not captive to us, right? We know that is no longer a scalable business model. So we're making it very easy. When we build an application with Genesis, the institution gets not only a functioning application, which we can operate for them, they get the source code for the application, a really well structured Java and React kind of framework, but much less source code than Anthropic would build from scratch. So you get maybe 10 to 20% of the code because we've got the frameworks underneath that provide resilience, governance, security, and functionality. And they also get a spec. So when you come out of it, you get the application, you get the source code, and you get a specification that leverages Genesis runtime. So if in the future we've helped you create value, and then you want to remove us, we'll make the offboarding easy as well. And that's the mental shift that vendors have to have. It's no longer a captive game, right? It's about the outcome. So we're focused very much on those 2 areas: scaffolding the infrastructure and getting rid of operational risk in this huge bank of tactical solutions that we lived for a long time.
That's got to be a fascinating sort of transition for you as well, from seeing the evolution of Genesis and then sort of coming to here, look at the current problems and work out where that evolves and that fits as a business.
Absolutely.
You mentioned it, earlier on about Salesforce, etc. And loads of the biggest companies in the world are all thinking about how they evolve and change their product offering.
Yes.
I think this is really exciting for you guys. It must be a great challenge to be looking at.
It is. It's refreshing to talk to clients from a new perspective, not just, hey, how much more of a license you want to buy. It's what are the move the needle problems you have, and how can we practically, in a real way, remove the AI hype, help you leverage this? Because a lot of these folks, as they're bonus on the adoption of AI. Right?
Yeah.
And I think there's no shortage of AI experiments. There's no shortage of, the models are no longer the problem. Everyone has access to the models. Is what do you do with it? What problems do you decide to pick? How do you scale, govern, and operate those to deliver value?
I would also say that I don't think this is a pivot. Like we wouldn't be where we are today without all the stuff that's happened beforehand.
Yeah.
So like the interesting thing about
it's an evolution.
It's an evolution.
Yeah,
so for example, I think what's really funky about our Create solution is that you drop your LLM in, and it's not going to write. If you say, for example, build me a single dealer platform for my business in equity derivatives in Brazil, whatever, your Kiro, Claude, or whatever would have to go over and write 100% of that code from start to finish. And obviously, it's not capital markets grade, but it's going to be what some people will use. Our view is that probably the front end will look really cool, but then from an operational standpoint and from a middle back office and security element, that's where the risk comes from. And maintenance. So where we believe we've got a really interesting angle on this is that the LLM would drop in and you say what you want to build, and it would look in our container and pick up the apps of microservices that we've already built stuff. You've got a GUI, put it there. Oh, it's a single dealer platform. we've got something that does that, put it there. We need this, it's a connectivity layer, it's a security layer, we'll drop it in. So instead of writing 100% of the code, it's writing a smaller part of the code, which we would then obviously validate as being capital markets ready, with a copy of the code and with a schematic overview of what this system software looks like. So I think it's really funky. I don't think anybody else does what we're doing.
It's a great spot to be in, isn't it, when you're starting from that point?
Yeah.
I want to talk about people doing what they're doing, because AI is in a really interesting phase. As you mentioned beforehand, right? Every boardroom is saying we need to be in the race, we need to be winning. And there's loads of examples starting to come through from when we first started really talking about this a couple of years ago to where now it's a genuine competitive advantage. But there are people there who are using it to competitive advantage, and then there are people there who are just sort of badging it onto existing products. So tell us what the difference between the haves and the haves not are in that sort of space, and what people can learn from that.
It's a really good question. I think you mentioned it's like the opening innings, right? So it's way too early to declare winners and losers, right? I mean, if you remember the early days, a couple of years ago. It was,
this is dog years.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. Who made an announcement they signed a deal with OpenAI? That was the big thing. You made a press release around that, right? And then great, that comes in, and then Anthropic came up, and you realize that signing deals is just the beginning, right? I think what I've seen, and I'm sure you got a view as well, is a lot of the initial successes have been internal. So there's been pronouncements. I've got an agentic framework for the company overall. That tends to be when I can now go into the agent and book my time off, right? Or I can do things, kind of HR internal things, which are good to do. The next evolution I saw was sort of more on the retail side, right? Chatbots, service agents, and that's an obvious place you can do it. I think it has been much more difficult in the capital markets side, right? Because of all the reasons we talked about. And I think the winners and losers are those folks that are now beyond the new sexy model, beyond the thousands of experiments they've done, is okay, now how we're going to prioritize the things we could choose to be the really big moving problems, and not just the press release kind of solutions. How can we govern that, and how can we scale it up? So I think we're in the early innings of that today. I don't think anyone is that much further ahead than others. Maybe a few, but it's hard to parse the press release from the reality. When we look under the covers, people are afraid of the same thing as you talked about. Too much code that's coming out too fast. Humans need to be able to review that. So humans are almost the bottleneck to AI, which is kind of scary.
But probably necessary as well.
100% necessary. So I think it's early days, very early days. And I think there's just so much more value, and it won't be over in 1 or 2 years, right? As you get success in these things, you realize you can solve really big problems. You can then see the flywheel. Financial institutions are becoming much more cost effective, right? And IT is now an enabler, not a blocker to progress. Who knows what the new financial services offerings can be?
Well, this has been a sort of 25-year play, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I started in the industry in 2000. And at that sort of stage, when I was talking to technology, when I was speaking to people,
tough take around.
Exactly. So when I first started, the conversations there were all about IT as a cost, and it was, you very rarely heard the term CTO. It was all IT directors, IT managers you were dealing with, and it sort of moved more and more to the boardroom over those last 2-3 decades that have been happening. And I think this sort of really propels it into one of those things where it becomes so critical. And it becomes the sort of real strategy of the business, as opposed to just a technology strategy that supports the business.
But don't you think, Toby, that's reflected in your business? When IT people were here, and then front office people were here. I bet there's probably a little bit of a
fusion of everything. And
exactly.
I think if you look at those front office people and their interaction with all of this as well, and their savviness and their knowledge of all of that, the two have fused completely together.
But also in terms of compensation,
of course,
now you see a big bump, and where do people want good technology people? I think the banks are at a point where most banks are born of acquisition, and as are lots of the in-stream brokers as well, and they have series of different systems which all need to be broken down to converge into 1 or 2 systems rather than 12. And I think a lot of them are looking at AI as being maybe a solution to help them do that, because they have historical tech legacy issues where there's too many systems and services. And I think from our point of view, we also have done scaffolding. We've helped people compress systems, before AI. But now we do see that as one of maybe the use cases for it, is to, okay, let's enable banks and brokers to help them review their systems and once and for all consolidate their stack. And we can help them use AI to do that. We think that that is probably the big use case. Because our experience of AI is, broadly speaking, more back office, middle office, admin, keeping databases up to, and I think now you're moving into the real funky stuff in the front end. That's where it's that's where the big players, and that's where all the money's spent.
Time to get funky. There's a song in that somewhere. Let's have a think. You know, when you mentioned this before about where there's human bottlenecks to everything, but and you know how early we actually are in the journey at the moment, which feels, as you say, it feels like only 2 years since we were speaking about the old days. But it feels like there's a lot that's happening at pace despite those bottlenecks. What does it mean for the AI really mean for the future of financial technology, do you guys think?
I think one perspective, this was kind of shocking, which goes to the size of the opportunity, not just for Genesis, the industry as a whole. It was a reputable source, I can't remember who it was, but they said if you look at the total IT spend of all the financial services, a broad spectrum, in the next 2 years it'll be larger than the U.S. defense budget, which just completely shocked me. And I looked back to that, and so it goes to what you said, right? All the acquisitions, all the systems, layers of products, and so the opportunity is to attack that cost base, make the firms much more efficient, which then allows them to provide the more free access and distribution of capital to industries and allow economies to grow. Right? It sounds a bit pie in the sky, but to me, I find the whole AI potential really exciting,
especially where you live as well.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't.
You're around you mentioned it before, a 7-mile radius, etc., and it's probably where the biggest thinking in the world.
So I mean, San Francisco, the joke now, you can't. There's no even the dogs have AI advertising in the background. So yeah, I mean, there's always the hype cycles, but and there will be some. There'll be some failures. There'll be some firms that have like Amazon deployed software that AI written. So that's going to happen, right? And it's going to start and slow. But the size of the problems that we can attack now are pretty substantial.
Yeah.
And that's what's most exciting. Now, what does that mean for the industry? Really, who knows? Right? But if we could do that, we do know that we're going to unlock lots of potential.
Yeah, and that potential looks good, because I'm always interested in this about when I've done the 700 odd episodes that I've done of this show, people are talking about friction reduction, people are talking about productivity gains, people are talking about efficiency gains, people are talking about reduction, people are people talking about speed. There's usually themes that sort of come through all of this. This is effectively covering all boxes, right?
I think so. And I was talking to our Genesis fellow head of architecture at Genesis yesterday, saying, so what have you found? Like, this is Jose, he's the brains of our foundation. And he said, look, I can now take on problems that are bigger than I could before, because I've got this really intelligent agent, and I can have 4 or 5 people at the same time. But I'm giving it the structure, I'm giving it the framework, I'm giving it the architecture to work within, right? And within those frameworks, it does very well.
Yeah.
And we would never let it just run free, right? Yeah. And write code. So I think it's empowering those people that have the framework and ideas in their head. And it's also empowering. Imagine if you're sitting at the desk, you're a really skilled analyst. You can now produce an application like the Genesis Create that's 80 to 90% of a production-ready application, without having to sit down and write a long, painful spec and so forth. So unlocking the value of people who know the business to be able to do more is pretty exciting as well, not just IT.
And that's sort of kind of, if you're again talking about sort of development no longer being the constraint for AI. You mentioned bottlenecks before in humans, but effectively being the bottlenecks. Is that what you see as the main issue or the main constraint?
No, I think that's maybe a good way for me to put that. Right, humans have to be in the loop because we're telling it what to do. It comes down to, in my view, making it prioritizing which things you want to take, because you can do so many things now. Much of the ones that are the move the needle problems for your institution, putting it away to operationalize and govern that and scale that. And that's going to be the thing that is going to be the difference between winners and losers. Not more pilots, not more models, because everyone's got access to those.
It's clear there's an AI opportunity surplus.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's managing that. Another interesting use case actually, which is a bit of an advert, is that we've actually been talking to some firms who have recently been taken over by private equity, and they've got these huge kind of growth expectations, and the reason they can't grow is because of the tech.
Yeah,
it's harder to scale the tech. and that's where Genesis Create comes in. Is that we're like, okay,
Solve that problem.
what's the products that you need to get out in what time frame to get your 8x whatever to make your private equity guys happy. So that's another
It's
area.
a massive area of ROI for people.
Exactly, it's an area where we feel we can add value. So we're talking to a lot of firms in that space.
Yeah, superb. And we're also, I mean, you talked on this a fair amount. I know it's a big area close to your heart, but I'm kind of covered it a little bit. But talk to us about the sort of significant role of governance in AI adoption.
Yeah, like, obviously I've touched on the regulator view on it. I think that I've got a use case where one of our clients has started. I've got two examples actually. So I've got a client who are now deploying live code, and they're really nervous about it. And my fear will be that there's a break or an issue, and the C-suite will go, "You need to roll that back." And it's like, well, we're not quite sure what is AI code and what isn't AI code. So there's a real hesitancy around it. I don't think there's much confidence in launching vibe code into the real world. We actually got another interesting experience where we were told by a firm that what they've been doing is allowing their product guys to vibe code, but that becomes a blueprint of the requirements that then goes to the technology team. The technology team rewrite it and delete this code. I mean, it's like really interesting. I think it all depends on that's your kind of like your level of risk acceptance in it. And now I guess a third example would be very smart companies that we'd all know who are very tech savvy, like the new liquidity providers, I shan't name names, who are so confident in the quality of their staff that they're very comfortable that whatever code they're creating using AI will be fit for purpose and capital markets ready. But I think that's a very small proportion of the people. So like to some extent,
pride comes before a fall sometimes.
I think to some extent, I think that that is the biggest concern. The governance issue is the biggest concern.
Okay, let's have start to wrap things up by talking about. The biggest firms are effectively sat there and already have AI in production, but there's still a lot of problems to solve. What do you think some of the biggest problems are still out there for the largest companies to be thinking about, to be concerned about, to have on their radar at the moment?
Yeah, I think Perky mentioned it. It's not the lack of models. It's not the lack of experiments. It's kind of what I said before, is thinking of all the things you can solve with AI and prioritizing which ones are going to be the most important to you, because the mandate's gone out, use AI for everything, and everyone's using AI for everything. So you can have all these kind of disparate solutions looking for problems at the same time, right? So I think there's got to be a step, not just governance about the code that gets deployed, it's governance about what you decide to choose, right? And I think we're at that point now where surplus of opportunities. How do you decide which ones you're going to go forward with, which ones you're not going to go for, which ones really move the needle? And that's what we see the firms at now. And different firms are choosing different paths. Right?
And I guess as Rich Needle really thinks they're putting their bets on, and they're focused on at the same sort of times, right? So it's an exciting time, as we say, for the business. Coming back to Genesis Create and talking about where it's there. As I said, everyone I've spoken to in Genesis is hyped at the moment about the potential, and there's a real energy coming out of the company. Tell us a little bit about what that means. Who should be reaching out to you, who should be speaking to you, and what they should be talking to you about.
The people we've been talking to are large financial institutions, the CTOs and CIOs, the guys who are trying to transform businesses, the people who are trying to consolidate platforms. It obviously varies from size of company to company, but we're very active at most of the conferences. Obviously, we've actually just launched a new website which shows some of our capabilities in this space, which definitely everyone should look at. But yeah, all the regular buyers should reach out to us, all the C-suite people.
Fantastic.
I think to add to that, two things. There's always going to be people who just want a solution, whether it's built by AI or whether it's built by squirrels on a wheel. They just want the solution right? So that's always there, and we'll deliver that. I think it comes down to those folks that are now ready to move from experimentation to production. And that could be IT people, that could be the business people, and those are the conversations that are the most interesting and exciting. So I think those two
come straight into.
I think that. So I should have jumped in. Yeah. So I think a lot of product managers appear to be the big users. Product guys who sit on the side of desks are really commercially minded, understand the needs, the requirements, understand the workflows, understand regs.
Yeah.
They're the guys that I can build that. Let me code it for
Our
you.
pre-sales engineers are using our tooling to build a POC that's 80% done.
Yeah.
And so we're using the stuff internally quite a bit.
It's incredible, and you're absolutely right on the product piece. I think that's become one of the most prominent roles now across, you know, the whole of the industry.
Absolutely.
And it fits you nicely, doesn't it? But it is so important, isn't it? It's that classic thing of listening to your customers, being able to solve it, and actually start thinking about problems. And that's where I think this excitement comes into it. I'm seeing in the market at the moment that people are genuinely thrilled about the sort of potential of what can be done now that just couldn't be dealt with in the future. So, listen, it's been wonderful having you both come in. Trotted across London in the hottest day of the year so far.
We did.
You've made it. Well done.
This is typical in London weather. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, we have it all the time.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Toby,
Thanks so much.
Toby.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.